Welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, a weekly show helping you grow, prosper, and evolve. Today, episode 365, Powerful Co-Creators. And now, Experience of the Soul.
Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This is our podcast. Yay, we are so excited to be on the channel now. And a couple of you, by the way, have had questions about it. Thank you for refinding us on the podcast channel. And it's great to have you with us. And of course, I'm here today for the show. Excited to be here. And my very talented producer, Mr. Sean Kilgore, is with us as well.
Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here, as always, with you. Thank you for having me and for letting me be a part of this and a part of your journey. So I'm deeply honored and very grateful.
Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to honor all the fathers and father figures in our lives. Of course, yesterday was Father's Day, so whether biological, chosen, or spiritual, fathers who lead with love and presence shape us in ways that obviously last a lifetime. Today, we bless and give thanks for every man who has offered guidance, protection, humor, and care. And we also hold space for those who are remembering and grieving or healing this Father's Day. May this day be a reminder of the divine strength and compassion that lives in all of us. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I hope everyone had a great day.
So welcome, everybody. This is episode 365 of the Experience of the Soul podcast. Today is Monday, June 16th. But of course, you might be joining us at any time, and we welcome you whenever you might be joining us. Today, we're talking about being powerful co-creators. So yeah, it's going to be some good stuff, I'm sure. But before we get into it, as always, we have another installment of This Week in Spiritual History. I was leaving it. Thank you. Okay, very. I just like teeing it up for you. Okay. All right. Here are the things that we honor this week. The birth of Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore. His birthday is June 22nd, born in 1854. While not always widely known, Charles Fillmore's legacy continues through the Unity movement today. He was born in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and Charles Fillmore went on to co-found Unity, which, if you're not familiar, is a positive, practical spiritual path forward on healing, affirmative prayer, and the divine presence within all people. I love the practical Christianity tagline that Unity has. We also are looking at South Africa's Soweto uprising, which happened June 16th, 1976, just a few weeks before I came into this earthly world. So this is a powerful student-led protest that happened back
very
then
powerful.
against the apartheid. It became a turning point in the global fight for racial justice. Today, it is honored as Youth Day in South Africa, where spiritual leaders and communities around the world reflect on this moment to recommit to justice, equality, and dignity for all people.
Amen to that, my friend. Amen.
Big time. We're also looking at the dedication of the Dome of the Rock, which was June 691 CE. This was the construction of the iconic Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, which was completed around this time. It's one of the oldest existing Islamic structures and is sacred to Muslims, Jews, and Christians as a symbol of shared spiritual heritage in a contested land.
Imagine.
Right. Way back then,
Muslims, Jews, and Christians could agree on something. Isn't that a miracle?
Right, exactly. And then our final happening that we are honoring is Eid al-Adha, which is approaching. I guess it says that it varies by the lunar calendar of when it happens each year.
Right.
So the exact dates shift, but mid-June is usually when it often happens, and it marks Eid al-Adha, which is one of the holiest days in Islam. It honors Prophet Abraham's faith and willingness to surrender fully to God. And during this time, Muslims around the world gather for prayer, charity, and celebration. So we want you all to know we hold all of these things in our hearts. And we just love that, again, the idea of unity just comes around every single week in the segment. And
it really, really does, Sean. That's why I love you doing it. And somebody catches our podcast that's never heard of me, who's never heard of Unity, as a denomination, who's never heard of New Thought. It's like, we really are about unity and about the connection and love of the sacred of all kinds, because at the center, they're all the same virtually.
Yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful truth that if
Yes, it
more
is.
people would just live in that truth and stop looking for the differences and the things that divide us. And like you say, I mean, it's a lot of the messages that we're being fed. We're being told to look for the things that divide us as opposed to these things that really unite us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why it's important you're doing it, Sean. That's really, really good.
Thank you. Thanks. And so our reflection question for this week as we move into the episode is, how will you dedicate or rededicate yourself to peace, justice, and faith this week? And with that, my friends, welcome officially to episode 365, Powerful Co-Creators.
Yeah, friends. I love this one, and it makes me feel happy, joyful, excited to bring this one to you because of how long I've been working on this one, and how when we realize we're powerful co-creators, how much we can change our lives for the better. And to simply know we're in the driver's seat is a paramount. So basically, my friends, today is about taking that important step to understand that you are a powerful co-creator. And by that, I mean, you have way, way more power than you might realize. And I wanted to talk about it because in today's world, it's easy to feel powerless instead of powerful. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about it because if you've been on the journey a while, you also know that as you are a powerful co-creator, sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. So I want to help, whether you're brand new on the journey or you've been on the journey a while. I want to help us all through it, including myself, and bring you along the journey with me as I talk a little bit about how I got to this powerful teaching. So, I grew up in the Methodist Church, and it was a wonderful beginning in my spiritual growth. And then when I was in the 5th grade, I was sent to a Christian school for a number of reasons. You'll have to read my book if you want to know more about that. But I ended up going to a Christian school, and it was Baptist based. And both churches, taught things about being good to one's fellow man, about loving God, about loving Jesus, about accepting Jesus into your heart and being of service. Well, I learned that our actions had consequences for sure, but I learned the most about being a co-creator with God probably from the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was not in AA, but my oldest brother was in AA and got sober when I was a teen. And what a gift that was to me, because I had seen him drinking and then I had seen him get sober. And what I learned, because I was about 12 or 13 probably as he got sober. And what was so amazing is watching his life transform as he began to take responsibility for his life and world. And the Methodist church that I grew up in was on the same street that I lived on. So we lived at the bottom of the hill and the church was at the top of the hill. And I would walk often. I would walk or ride my bike up the hill to go to church, I used to play tennis against the side of the church wall of the educational building. And I was always friends with the pastors and their kids. So I was at church often. And on I believe it was Friday night, there was an AA meeting that met. And the AA meeting was so big, they met down in the church basement and they parked all the way down the street, almost to our house. That's how long of a train of cars there were, because it was, parking along both sides of the street and everything. And it was a very popular meeting. So it was the meeting that my brother, got his first chip. And I was there. I think I was there when he got his 1-year chip. Yeah, that's a really big celebration usually. And but what had happened during the year is when AA was going on in the basement, there was also Al-Anon meetings going on in the educational building. And so because I knew where the hidden key was, if the door was locked, I would go get the hidden key and I would walk into the educational building, and there would be smoke filling the hallways because during that time there was still smoking at AA and Al-Anon meetings. And I would actually put my ear to the grate in the classrooms. They had these little, grates for air to filter in and out. And I would listen through the grate to the Al-Anon meeting. And so not only had I seen and, my brother's recovery and gone to his meetings, I also read some of the literature of AA. And then I started hearing some of the principles of Al-Anon. And Al-Anon was for the friends or family members of alcoholics or drug addicts, So anyway, what I learned sitting in those meetings was, and listening in, I was about 12 or 13 during that time, is I learned that to live a good life, to live an abundant life, to live a life centered in God, you must take responsibility for your life and world. And what I realized as I grew and developed, and by the time I made it into unity, I heard the term powerful co-creator. So I think it's so interesting that we're very near Charles Fillmore's birthday on this topic today, because even unity and the recovery program as well have always been very closely related. Bill W., who started AA, believe it or not, his wife was a secretary at a Unity church. So I find all this very interesting, all the connections. Also, very interestingly, Bill W., who founded AA, was in touch with Carl Jung and all his work on the psyche and the archetypal and all of that. So around spiritual awakening. I'm saying all this because what all of these teachings have in common, both the archetypal and AA, both AA and unity, they're all about taking personal responsibility for your life and world, and realizing how much power we have in creating the life, a life on purpose, a life lived from spirit, a life, as I like to say, lived from soul. And you will hear me say often, we are here to grow, prosper, and evolve. How do we do that? By being powerful co-creators with God. I love this idea. In other words, there is no one to blame, my friends. There's no one to blame. If life is not how you like it, change it. And how do you change it? You change your thoughts, you change your world. You can change your life for the better by owning the spiritual power that was given to you by God from the very beginning of time. And you have the power to make changes in your life. And as you make those changes and as you live into those changes, right, you are becoming what we call a powerful co-creator. As we are making those changes, it's like the very presence of God rises up in us and helps move us forward on the journey. And it's very interesting because what the 12 steps describe, I believe, is really helping. It points to something, and what it's pointing to is to us living from soul and not the limited personality. And Sean, I know I sent you the link for the 12 steps, and
yes,
I wanted you to just read like maybe the first 3 steps. Will you read those?
sure. Step 1 is we admitted that we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love these because I've had a lot of unity people say, well, I have a little hard time with the first step 1 of the 12 steps. And I say, all that first step is saying that our personality is powerless over alcohol, right? And so we had tried to, so many of us who are in recovery had tried to live life from the personality, thinking we could, quote unquote, control all of that, and that our lives were fine, even though we were drinking like, fish and everything else. So again, my journey with it was not with alcohol, but it was actually in the people that were the alcoholics. And so what I learned in my journey was, I was powerless over controlling somebody else's behavior. And so what it helped me understand is I was powerful in controlling my own, that I could work with God. I could live from my soul. And rather than trying to control somebody else's drinking or using or attitudes, what I could do is be about my own journey, my own healing, my own development. So that idea of being powerless was not a bad one, because it was about being powerless over an addiction and living from the personality. But you have to read the rest of the steps to understand step one, right? And so that step two came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. What is the power greater than ourselves, right? Well, that power lives within us. It is the presence of God. It is what we often call spirit. And then our individual journey is the journey of the soul. And so, friends, already in step two, we are learning that there is a greater power than our own little minds, than our own little personality. And so this is how we begin to grab hold of our spiritual power, is realizing I'm more than my experience. I am more than my addiction. I am more than my personality, right? And so it's like there's something else that's going to help me restore to sanity. And that something else is a power we call God. It's a power we call spirit. And that spirit of God, that presence of God lives within each of us as a soul. And step three is a beautiful surrender step. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Wow. In other words, I'm not going to try to do this all on my own. What am I going to do? I'm going to turn this over to God, realizing God is the ultimate power. So you see, my friends, really understanding our place in the world and how we came to be, how our personality came to be, we realize the personality is limited. I talk about this all the time, but I wanted to talk about it from the 12 steps because that's one of the key ways I got here. Even though I'm not alcoholic, I learned how to take responsibility for my life and world from this program and from the program called Al-Anon. CODA is another great one. ACA is another great one for dealing with our codependence. So, and they all basically stem off, the 12 steps are very, very similar in all the programs because this is the foundational program. This is what Bill W. came up with as a way of guiding people into recovery, and not only into recovery, but staying in recovery and not going back to that old way of being. Because as the steps go on, we'll see it ends with spiritual awakening. So what my hope for you is that as you're listening to this, you're saying, well, is there a way that somehow I'm not fully co-creating with God what's possible for me? Is there a way I have not turned my life over to God in a complete way? And the rest of the steps in the 12 steps, Sean's going to read in a second, and we'll show you exactly how to do that. So, Sean, will you read 4, 5, and 6 for me on the steps?
Yes, absolutely. If I could just add in here, the one that I found, it sort of breaks each one down into an individual word. So, step 1 is honesty, being honest with yourself. Step 2 is hope. Step 3 is faith.
Absolutely.
Step 4 is courage. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
I'm telling you, that's a big one.
Yeah. Step 5 is integrity. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs.
Wow.
And then step
6
is willingness. We're entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character.
Wow. And so give me the words for 4, 5, and 6 again, Sean.
Courage, integrity, and willingness.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying in the 12-step programs about working the steps. And this is what this means, working the steps. You're not just reading them, although they are read at every meeting, but you're writing down, like step 4, it starts to get real serious about, people will say, have you done your 4th step yet? Because the 4th step is so intense because of writing everything down. You're literally writing your moral inventory. You're putting down on paper, what's up for you. And then once you do that, step 5 is sharing it with somebody else. And it really reminds me too of the last show we did about our feelings, because once you admit everything, shame doesn't have any control over you anymore. And, there's a saying in this 12 steps that you'll hear in meetings, secrets bring sickness. And what's so powerful about step 5 is there's no more secrets. You're sharing it with one trusted person, often a sponsor or somebody, with a lot of years of recovery that can hold your spiritual space. It's what people do with me in one-on-one sessions, right? They're admitting whatever is wrong and trying to get help and support. So, friends, we can never heal if we don't admit what's there. And so this is why I wanted to bring this to us, is in our own work as spiritual students, you could apply this to any life, and this would help you. You don't have to be in recovery to benefit from these steps. And then finally, number 6 is another, for me, it's another surrender step. Sean, what was your word for that one?
Willingness.
Yeah. Because it is willing to have aspects removed. Yeah. It's a statement of surrender. It's a statement of release, and certainly of willingness. Let's read, let's see, I wanted to do 3 at a time. Let's do 7, 8, and 9. Yeah. And then we'll do the last 3. Yeah.
7 is humility. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
8 is love. Made a list of all persons we harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And 9 is responsibility. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others.
So, friends, what I love about this statement is that number 7, humility, is so, so important about being a powerful co-creator, because if we think we're creating ourselves, we're not in humility. And it's such a balance. And again, it's what we talked about last show about that human and divine, because the humility piece is from the personality. We know we don't know everything, and then that 8 and 9 step is really about taking responsibility for your life and world. That's what I was saying at the very beginning, that to know, to really co-create with God, you have to be willing to take responsibility, both for what you've done in the past and what you want to do in the future. And this is what I love about the 12 steps. And the good news is, as we become more empowered and we, really understand this, we have little moments of kind of dawning and awakening, as we go. And that's really what the last 3 steps are about. Sean, will you read those for us?
10, discipline. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, spiritual awareness. Thought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12 is service. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Yes. In other words, the work is never done. To me, that's number 10 is refer to step 4. Yeah. Remember that step 4? Yeah. Keep doing that. Keep doing that. Keep doing that. And then, again, what I love about 11 and 12 is it finally gets to the awakening piece, right? Because it's like, well, once you start to take responsibility for your life, and then you enter a prayer and meditation practice, awakening is going to happen for you. And I feel in the world right now, we keep waiting on somebody else to do it instead of just awakening our own lives through our own spiritual work and practice. And I wanted to bring you these steps, friends, because there's so much power in them. And what we all start to discover over time as our journey deepens is we all have some addiction we're dealing with. Some of us are addicted to being right. Some of us are addicted to interrupting. Some of us are addicted to food. Some of us are addicted to social media and television. Some of us are addicted to making others wrong, to judging everybody. And these steps, all these 12 steps, will help pull you out of that and help you move into taking more responsibility for your life and world, and also help you awaken at the level of the soul. And that's what I feel like we're all trying to do. Sean, were you going to say something there?
It's just interesting that these are directed to people in recovery when it's really the way we should all be living, whether you're in recovery or not.
Hello. Yep.
Like, this is the way to live. Right?
These are clues. Yes.
Right. Yeah, I just found that interesting. But,
well, yes, and I should say a word about why anyone has any addiction. We move into addiction when reality is too much for us to handle. That means there was some kind of trauma that was so hard for us that we just couldn't deal with life on life's terms, and so we chose something to deal with it. Sometimes it's just life seeming like too much. Sometimes it's pressure in teen years to be like everyone else, and you don't know how to fit in. So you start smoking or you start drinking to fit in, and you find, well, when I smoke and drink, I feel a little bit, more like myself, we think, in other words, we drop our inhibitions, and then, we start to have to need that then every time we want to relate with others. And so what happens is that if we can't handle life and we start using something else, well, pretty soon that something else becomes our God rather than God. And so it really begins to stunt our growth emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, because we believe that we need this other substance to be happy. And so these steps are really about emotional and spiritual intelligence. And the reason they are is because when we use anything, and I mean anything, social media, food, addiction to anything, then, where was I going? That when we use, these addictions to anything, whatever age we are, where we started. So like a lot of people start using around 13 or 14. During the puberty years, because their bodies are changing, they don't know how to handle it, and they don't know how to fit in. I've had clients who've started using as early as age 6, some as late as their 20s, but mostly people start using around 12 or 13 because life just seems too hard. Well, think about how you are emotionally at 12 or 13. Whatever age you start using is where your emotional development stops. And this is important to realize because if it's stopped, it means you are not growing at, a proper level, and you may not be at an adult emotional level, and you're trying to handle adult problems from a 12-year-old perspective. It's why when you see people in addiction, they do crazy things like not pay bills. They do crazy things like rage. That's what a 12-year-old does. And they learn to do that because they haven't emotionally developed past age 12 or 13, because that was the age they started using. So my point is, friends, that these steps not only lead to awakening spiritually, but they help move up your emotional intelligence, because to be emotionally intelligent means I'm responsible for what I think and feel, and ultimately for what I do and say. Right? And so this is what these steps help you move towards, is into awakening, but through emotional intelligence and taking responsibility for your life. So I wanted to mention that about addiction, because if you're in recovery, this is not always something that's heard in meetings, but one of my mentors was an expert in the 12 steps. And I found her after I found Al-Anon, and she was so important, deeply, deeply important on my spiritual journey and my emotional intelligence journey as well. She helped me learn how to feel a feeling. I didn't really even know what a feeling was when I started working with her. So it's been a journey of emotional waking up and spiritual waking up for me as well. So, my dear friends, what I want you to know is you have tremendous spiritual power as you grow emotionally, mentally, and take responsibility for your life and world. You're going to move more and more into a spiritual awakening, into spiritual development. There will be a dawning of consciousness in your life and world, and you will begin to wake up in many, many areas. My hope for you is that if you are struggling with an addiction, that you will reach out and get help. Please, please, please know that you're worth healing. And we can put a couple of links in the show notes about how to find a AA group in your area. I mean, it's worldwide, and you can join now an online group. One of the benefits of COVID, there were few, but that was one of the benefits, is that, AA groups popped up all around the country. I sometimes attend Al-Anon online myself. And I really want you to know, friends, ultimately that you're a powerful co-creator, and that maybe the 12 steps might help you get there. Sean, were you going to offer up something?
I did. I just wanted to provide some resources. So there, you can visit aa.org, or you can call the National Rehab Hotline, which is 866-210-1303. Again, that's the National Rehab Hotline. It's 866-210-1303. They also have a website that is nationalrehabhotline.org.
Wonderful, wonderful, Sean. Thank you so much. And my friends, I hope you connected with the message today. I love to be reminded myself and remind others very deeply about their innate spiritual power. And my hope for you, with everything that's going on politically and in the world today, is to know that you are a powerful spiritual being, that God is known in and through you. And as you take responsibility for your life and world, you will begin to create more than you might have imagined, and even move into spiritual awakening and this dawning of consciousness on a daily basis as you learn and grow. This is my prayer, and this is my hope for you, my friends. And I'm glad you joined us today. I'm honored to share my journey with so many people on recovery, and to be in recovery myself from codependence. And I bless all my siblings and all those I learned from, especially that older brother that helped me get right into recovery at a very early age, because it probably saved my life and has been very, very important on my journey. So, my dear friends, thank you for joining us today, as always, and blessings on the journey.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, helping you grow, prosper, and evolve. This podcast is made possible because of listeners and viewers just like you. If you would like to support the podcast with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head on over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Experience of the Soul podcast is copyright 2025 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved, and is produced by Sean Kilgore. A production of the Soulworks Group, Incorporated.